friends, welcome back. I hope you are all well. Jenny here with another tutorial, and today we're going to be creating a card with a belly band, and not in the traditional way that you would think a belly band would run horizontally. We are going to create a vertical band so that we can have more room to add all of those beautiful layering details that I love. So in this video, we're going to create this card, and then at the end of the video, I'll show you the variation that I created, just swapping out the collection. And so if that sounds good to you, then stick with me and we'll make it together. For today's project, I'm going to use this Fruit Paradise A4 paper pad from Prima, and it is always my goal to create a design that is versatile enough that you could easily swap out a different collection and create the same project. So if you want to do one for a holiday or specific theme, you could still create a similar looking project. For my purpose, I really want to try and get through some of my stash paper, and I really liked that this particular paper pad had some smaller cut apart images. I wanted to use a layering process for my card, and so I knew I could stack those up and still get a nice large focal image, but just by adding two different smaller images. So let's get started on our project. This is a standard 5 by 6.5 inch card, and I did use the offcuts to finish the inside just so that it would have a nicer finished look. And I did want to utilize these oh so sweet cherries. Michigan, I don't know if you know, is famous for cherries in the summertime, so I thought that would be appropriate. It is not summer today, however, it is snowing and blowing quite hard, so hopefully you can't hear that in the background. Now, the reason I'm able to utilize this larger pattern is because we'll be able to see it when we remove the belly band. Normally I would not, because it would just be covered and I would lose what this pattern is about. So I would typically choose a smaller pattern for this, and so I think this is a nice way to get use out of those larger, more graphic images. So now we want to create the band, and as I mentioned in the intro, I wanted to create a vertical rather than horizontal belly band just so that I could get more usable space for that layering detail. So I'm going to wrap that band this way, and because this is a 6.5 inch card, I was not going to be able to get the full wrap with one piece. I do have some larger 17-inch sheets of that 65-pound paper. I don't know if you remember me mentioning that in a video probably about a year ago, but it did sell out pretty quickly, and so not so many people were able to get that for the wider widths. So we're going to just join these together, and for the purpose of my card, I just measured the width of that band that I wanted to have, including the border of the solid cardstock, and then I added 1/8 of an inch to the width. That way I'd still get a nice white border showing around the outside. So now what I want to do is bring in my scoreboard. And the reason that you can't really create these off project and then add them is because the bulk of the paper layers that you have is going to increase the amount of space that you need. So it's always just a really good idea to make the card base first and then wrap your band around it so that you get the exact amount that you need. So I have taken my 2 strips and I just cut these from an 8.5 by 11 sheet and trim them down. I put some double-sided adhesive on both ends, and I'll wind up flipping one so that when I adhere them, I've got 2 points of contact for that glue. So I'm just going to measure this over. I already know that my card is basically 6.5 inches high, and so if I measure this out to be roughly 6.5 inches, I will have enough of the solid piece on the front. I don't want the joined pieces to be on the front where it will be more noticeable. So you see here that that would come to 6.5 inches, but I'm just gonna slide that down to 5. And that way I know I'll get that full solid piece in the front. So what I wanna do is bring my card over to that board C and find basically where I know when I wrap it around, I won't have any joined pieces there. So let's take this right to one of the grooves in the scoreboard along the edge of the card. And I'll just make a nice score mark there. And then I will slide this over all as one piece so that I can get a groove on this side as well. And so this is going to be the fold that's a nice crisp fold on the front. So let's go ahead and fold that over now. And you see how I'm just keeping everything tight up against my scoreboard so that I can keep everything nice and square. It will be easy to get this to be square when you fold it over because it's cut to be the same width. So you just have to line that part up. Now what I want to do is come in with more of that tape and add that once again to both sides. So this portion, I would probably consider adding a little bit of the Tombow just so that it would reinforce that seam in the back. Now we know that it's nice and even. Come in and remove your paper backing and then add a little bit of that Tombow, not too close to the edge so that it doesn't smear out, and then join those two pieces together, and that will create the one continuous band. If you want to, you could finish the back of the card as well on the band so that it would coordinate, but I think because it's the back, I'm just going to focus on finishing the front. Now you can see that our band will slide easily on and off, and we'll be able to see all those sweet cherries on the front. So let's go ahead and finish off the front. And the first thing I want to do is add the collection paper. So this is just the B side of this cherry print, which I thought was perfect because I know it already coordinates, and I'm going to adhere that to the center. So I want to just pull that closer to me in the moment because it's hard for me to see over this to get it on straight, but I just want to have the nice white border of the cardstock and then also the same green border as on the layering piece for the bottom. So that will be a very nice consistent look, and you see how nice and sturdy that is. It's just going to be perfect to hold up to all the weight of all of the embellishing layers. So I've got a couple of things here that I want to add, and I did already pre-arrange this, and I just snapped a quick picture on that on my phone so that I could see how all of this went together. And so remember that I shared that I had two of those cards from the cut apart sheet, which are a little bit smaller. I did put on some 110-pound cardstock so that it would be more sturdy, and then I put some double-sided foam adhesive here so that I could begin to build my dimension. And then I've also added an eyelet here as well as put some twine through, and I do have two of those, so we're going to create an elongated focal image and then have the dimension from the spacers. So I've also got a couple of different types of my die cut leaves, and I've also got that in a couple of different colors. And why I chose the ones that I did was I pulled these directly from the images, so I knew they would coordinate perfectly. And then I've also cut some of the Be Bold Blooms flowers from Spellbinders, and then I stacked those up and finished them with the center. And I also picked these colors right from that image as well. So I know this is all going to coordinate really well when I get it put together. And the first thing I want to do is give myself a base for my doilies. Now, originally I had just cut one doily and I attempted to trim it in half and then position it so that I could utilize that one doily to cover the amount of space that I needed to, but I didn't feel like that it would show a cut edge and I didn't want that. So I did decide to make 3, and then in that process I decided I could do some additional layering as well. So that worked out in my favor. And here's the picture, I don't know if that's gonna focus on that, of how my layout is meant to go. So I know that I can space all these bits as I'm working along because there are so many different little pieces to go here. So the first thing I want to do is add the 2 doilies that I know will be on the bottom. Now, I don't mind overlapping just a little bit, but I don't want to go too far because these are a little bit more fragile since they're cut, and I do want to utilize my glue gun for this because once I get all these layers on, it will be pretty heavy. Even though they're flat flowers, I'm going to add so many of them with the dimensional spacers on the tag. So I definitely want to make sure this is well secured. And then this one is meant to go pretty much on the bottom there. And I just got a little piece left in there to pick out. Okay, so now what I want to do is begin to place some of those bits just for the sake of keeping everything lined up where I want. So I know that this tag will come almost all the way to the top. And so I can position the first set of leaves here, and I know that I need them to go this far up. So let's just tack these into place with the hot glue. And then later, once I get everything right where I want it, I can come back in and put a little bit of the Tombow on the back of those leaves just so that they don't become fragile. So I'm going to continue to reference that image, and I did cut some of those darker leaves and I want to utilize them in the way that best shows that. So these originally had 3, but when I put the layers on, one of the leaves was covered, so I just clip that off and then I can use that in a separate section. So I'll get a little bit more use out of those. And so I definitely want to have as much of that first layer of the greenery showing. So I'll just kind of position that a little bit off center of the one on the bottom. And then I want to add my image back so that I can measure the placement of these next items. So I do have my smaller flower here, and that's going to cover up a little bit of the stems, so that will look a little bit nicer and more tidy. So let's just add that now. Then I've got a loopy twine bow here, and I'll fold that in half so that I can get it positioned exactly how I want. I'm going to skip the ribbon on this project because it's going to be quite full, but I do like this as kind of a way to bridge the gaps in the arrangement and make sure that this looks like a generous amount of layers. So let's go ahead and clip off that excess now, and then we can continue to work along. So remember to continue to place your focal image back where you want it. And so I think this is a good time actually to go ahead and add that. Because I have spacers only on the top, I'm going to be able to adhere the bottom directly to that card, and that will help in the next few layers to give me a solid piece to glue down to. So remember, this is going pretty much up here, and I'll just make sure that my twine is exactly where I want that. And then the next item to go up, the doily. And so I did cut 3 of these, as I mentioned before, and I'm going to put this one here. And I just kind of want to break up the space in between the floral arrangement and the background. So even though it looks like these are overlapping kind of a lot, it will serve a purpose when we get all those layers in place. So I'm just going to add that here. I don't want to cover up too much of those sweet cherries, but it will be a nice layering detail. So here comes our first larger flower. And remember, I pulled that color directly from the cherry. I'm going to add that here. And so it is offset a little bit, and that will help to fill in all this space. So here is the first larger flower. And now I want to put that second tag on, and you can see how that's going to overlap. And we still have more of that foam, and we can get more dimension as we work along. So now we are left with more leaves and more flowers, and I want to add this in my usual kind of L shape for floral arrangement so that I can fill in this corner a little bit. So I'll hold that in place and stick that down with the glue. And then for this next layer, I want to cover that again, just like I did with the first one. I cut one of the leaves off so that I could utilize them in a separate area, and you'll see that in just a moment. And then I'll bring in that loopy twine bow again. Same process of folding it in half. And then I'll place my flowers again, just like I did previously, so that I know exactly where they're going to fall. And then I'll bring in the other two leaves that I have die cut and place those where I want them. So let's just put a little bit of glue on the back and tuck that in so that I'm not covering up too much of those cherries. And then here are those other two leaves, and I just adhered them to each other so that I could position them exactly where I wanted them as a single unit. So let's put on this smaller flower first. And then our final detail for these flowers will be this larger one, and that's going to help cover the knot from our loopy twine bow. Okay, so that's all for our vertical belly band greeting card, and as you can see, it slides on and off very easily, and we did get so much beautiful layering with those focal images and die cut flowers. Now, as I mentioned before, I did go ahead and create an additional card before I started filming so that you could see how easy it would be to swap out a different collection or a different holiday and create that same project. So I have the band here, and I did want to utilize some of the plaid from this base, and so I die cut those same doilies but in black, and then cut out a circle of the middle. See, I had to cover that because I cut that out of the middle, and so I could bring that plaid up to the top layers. I've still got the same style of flower, but I just cut them with a Halloween theme. And then instead of having the smaller focal images that were the cut apart sheets, I decided to have a look at the sticker sheet, and I found two that were a little bit smaller, and so I wanted to utilize those. I stacked them just exactly the same, but instead of adding the third doily, I allowed that cat image to show more fully because I really liked that guy's little bow tie. And so this also has some sequins here, and then I did add just a little bit of ribbon to this one to fill in this corner, but it's just the same exact style of project, and I simply swapped out the paper collection for one with a holiday theme. So of course you can think of this for birthdays or Christmas or any other theme that you like and still create the same card. And so I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know down in the comments which one is your favorite card from this video, and don't forget to give me a big thumbs up for this tutorial. You can find links for all our socials in the description below, and if you're not already, I would love for you to join our crafty little family by hitting that subscribe button and also the bell notification. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.